The gallery space was immaculate. White walls, polished concrete floors, dramatic lighting that made every piece of art look like it belonged in a museum. This was the Metropolitan Art Gallery on Fifth Avenue, the most prestigious venue in the city for emerging artists. 300 people had gathered on this Friday night for what the invitation called an evening of emerging talent. At the center of the room, illuminated by professional spotlights, stood a collection of paintings that had taken me 5 years to complete. My paintings. My life's work. My soul translated into oil and canvas. My name is Victoria Hayes. I'm 32 years old. I grew up in a lower-middle-class neighborhood where art was considered a luxury, a frivolous pursuit that would never pay the bills. My parents were loving but practical. My mother worked in hospital administration. My father was a mechanic. They wanted me to study business or nursing, something stable. Something safe. But I couldn't ignore the voice inside me that demanded to create. That demanded to paint. So I worked 3 jobs while pursuing my MFA. I spent nights alone in my studio apartment, surrounded by canvases and the smell of turpentine, painting until my hands cramped and my eyes burned. I took on freelance graphic design work to pay the bills. I served tables on weekends. I donated plasma twice a month for extra cash. For 7 years, I sacrificed everything: relationships, social life, financial stability, mental health, to chase this dream. 2 years ago, that sacrifice nearly killed me. I'd been working on my final series, the one that would launch my career. 12 paintings. Each one representing a stage of emotional descent and recovery. I was pouring everything into those pieces, spending 18-hour days in my studio. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating properly. I was isolated, consumed, obsessed. Depression crept in quietly. It started with days when I couldn't get out of bed. Then weeks. I stopped answering calls. I stopped leaving my apartment. The paintings became my entire world, and the world became a hostile, suffocating place. I started having thoughts about ending things. Not in a dramatic way. In a quiet, matter-of-fact way. Like, this is too hard. I can't do this anymore. Everyone would be better off without me. That's when Elena found me. Elena Martinez had been my best friend since college. 12 years of friendship. We'd been through everything together: terrible boyfriends, family drama, career setbacks, personal crises. When I was at my lowest, when I was actively researching methods and writing goodbye letters in my journal, Elena showed up at my apartment unannounced. She'd let herself in with the spare key I'd given her years before. She found me on my bathroom floor at 3 in the morning. She didn't judge. She didn't panic. She just sat with me. She held me while I cried. She called a crisis hotline with me. She drove me to the hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. She stayed with me in the emergency room for 8 hours. She came to every therapy session I had for the first 3 months. She was there through medication adjustments and group counseling sessions. She was there when I wanted to give up on life and on my art. Elena saved my life. During my recovery, I continued painting, but differently. Instead of the frantic, desperate creation of before, I was creating with intention, with purpose, with the understanding that I was creating to survive, not to escape. Elena was in my studio constantly, offering support, bringing me meals, listening as I talked through my emotions. She was my anchor. She was the person who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. 18 months into my recovery, something shifted in our friendship. Elena started asking me detailed questions about my painting process. She wanted to know everything: my inspirations, my techniques, my vision for each piece. At first, I was excited to share. My best friend cared about my art. I thought we were bonding over something deeper. I started introducing her to my other artist friends. I recommended her for networking events. I advocated for her to be included in exhibition planning meetings. Elena had always wanted to be an artist, she'd told me. She'd studied art history in college, but had pursued a corporate marketing job for stability. She'd always felt like she missed out on the creative path. So I tried to help her find her way into the art world. I was so grateful to her for saving my life that I wanted to give back. I wanted to help her chase her dreams the way she'd helped me chase mine. What I didn't realize was that she was studying me like I was one of my own paintings, cataloging every detail, memorizing every technique, absorbing my creative identity so she could wear it as her own. The signs were subtle at first. Elena mentioned that she'd taken a painting class. Then she said she was creating her own work. She showed me some pieces. They were technically competent but creatively hollow. They were paintings created from a textbook, not from the soul. I gave her constructive feedback, suggestions for deepening her work, finding her authentic voice. Then came the day she asked me to collaborate with her on a piece. A large installation. She had the concept, but she wanted my technical expertise. I agreed. It seemed like a beautiful way to blend our talents. What it actually was an opportunity for her to study exactly how I worked at every level. For 6 weeks, we worked on that installation together. I showed her my process from start to finish. I explained my color theory, my composition choices, my emotional intentions. I demonstrated my techniques with oils, with acrylics, with mixed media. I introduced her to my contacts in the art community. I vouched for her credibility. When the installation was complete, it was stunning. We displayed it at a smaller gallery in Brooklyn. The response was mixed but generally positive. Elena spoke about the piece in interviews, crediting me publicly. Everything seemed fine. But then everything changed. I received a call from the Metropolitan Art Gallery in March. The curator, a woman named Patricia Sinclair whom I'd been in contact with for 3 years, told me that my final series, the 12 paintings representing my emotional journey, had been selected for their summer exhibition. This was the moment I'd been working toward my entire life. The Metropolitan was prestigious. A solo exhibition here would launch my career. I would finally be able to quit my design work and pursue art full-time. I was ecstatic. I called Elena immediately. Elena, I got the call. The Metropolitan is exhibiting my work. All 12 paintings. There was a pause on the other end of the line. A weird, uncomfortable pause. That's amazing, Vic, congratulations, she said, but there was something cold in her voice. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too caught up in my own excitement. 2 weeks later, I received another call from Patricia Sinclair. She sounded confused and concerned. Victoria, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you give your best friend permission to submit work to our gallery under her own name? My stomach dropped. What? Elena Martinez submitted a portfolio to us. Work that she claims is hers. But the paintings, they're almost identical to yours. Same subject matter. Same color palette. Same composition style. In some cases, the titles are nearly identical. What's going on here? I felt sick. Can you send me her submissions? Patricia emailed me the files within minutes. I opened the PDF and my heart stopped. Elena had submitted 6 paintings. 6 paintings that were my work. Not collaborations. Not inspired by my work. My actual paintings. Paintings I'd created in my studio. Paintings that were supposed to be in the Metropolitan exhibition under my name. She'd photographed my work and submitted it as her own. There was a cover letter in her submission where she discussed her emotional journey, and her recovery process, and her struggle with depression and suicidality. She was telling my story. She was using my trauma, my pain, my recovery, as her own narrative. She was claiming credit for the artistic work that had saved my life. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to pass out. Patricia called me back. Victoria, I want you to know that I've removed her submission from consideration. Her work is no longer in our evaluation pool. But I needed to alert you to this situation because it's serious. This is intellectual property theft and misrepresentation. You may want to consider legal action. I thanked her and hung up the phone. Then I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I thought about ending my life. The pain was that acute. The betrayal was that complete. The person I loved most in the world had stolen from me. She'd used my suffering for her own gain. She'd taken the one thing that was truly mine and claimed it as hers. I spent the next 3 days in my apartment, barely eating, barely sleeping. On the 4th day, my therapist called me for our regular check-in. When I told her what had happened, she did something she'd never done before. She insisted on seeing me in person, same day. We met at her office at 5 p.m. For an hour, I told her everything. The friendship. The rescue. The collaboration. The theft. The betrayal. Victoria, you're in crisis again, Dr. Reeves said carefully. I'm hearing thoughts of self-harm. I need to know if you're safe. I'm safe, I said. I'm not going to hurt myself. But I'm not going to let her get away with this either. And that's when something shifted inside me. Instead of despair, I felt something else. Clarity. Purpose. Anger that was cold and focused rather than hot and destructive. Dr. Reeves helped me develop a safety plan, and we scheduled daily check-ins for the next 2 weeks. But more importantly, we talked about what I needed to do next. Not from a revenge standpoint, but from a self-protection standpoint. I needed evidence. I needed documentation. I needed to understand exactly what Elena had done, and how far it went. I started by looking through my phone. Every photo I'd ever sent to Elena. Every text conversation. Every time I'd talked about my art, my process, my emotions. There were hundreds of messages. I created a document and organized them chronologically, highlighting every moment where she'd asked me questions about my work, every time I'd shared something vulnerable or creative. Then I reached out to everyone in my art community, my therapist, my MFA cohort, my gallery contacts, other artists I knew. I asked simple questions. Has Elena ever shown you her work? Has she talked about her creative process? Do you remember when she got involved in the art world? The answers painted a clear picture. Elena had become my shadow. She'd absorbed my identity so completely that she'd started presenting herself as a serious artist in the community. She'd been networking under my reputation. Artists I'd introduced her to were now saying things like, Elena seems really talented, and Elena has such a deep understanding of emotional expression. They were basing these assessments on her claims about her work, which were actually my work. I hired a lawyer. A woman named Susan Morrison who specialized in intellectual property cases. I showed her everything, the photos of my original paintings, the photos Elena had submitted, my process documentation, my emails with the gallery curator, my messages with Elena, the timeline of our friendship, and most importantly, the dates I'd completed each painting compared to the dates Elena claimed to have created them. This is clear-cut theft, Susan said. She photographed your paintings, claimed them as her own, and submitted them to a prestigious gallery using your emotional narrative without permission. You have grounds for a civil lawsuit and potentially criminal charges. What do you recommend? I asked. We start with a cease and desist letter. We notify her that she's not to claim ownership of your work, not to display your work under her name, not to use your likeness or your story in connection with art. We also notify the gallery that this is a known IP infringement situation so that if she tries to submit anywhere else, we have documentation. Susan drafted the letter herself. It was formal, detailed, and absolutely devastating. She included photographs of my original paintings with the dates I'd created them, side-by-side comparisons with Elena's submissions, and copies of all my documentation. The letter made it clear that I had extensive evidence and was prepared to pursue legal action. We sent it via certified mail to Elena's apartment. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing from her. Then Elena showed up at my apartment building. She was crying, disheveled, her hair unwashed. She'd been trying to call me for days, but I hadn't answered. She buzzed my apartment repeatedly until I finally let her in. When she got upstairs, she looked like she'd aged 10 years. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her hands were shaking. "Why did you send me that letter?" she demanded. "Why are you doing this to me?" I stayed calm. I'd rehearsed this conversation with my therapist. I'd prepared myself emotionally for this exact moment. "Elena, you stole my paintings. You claimed them as your own. You submitted them to a gallery under your name using my personal narrative. You need to explain what you were thinking." "I didn't steal them," she protested. "I was inspired by your work. I was learning from you. You submitted photographs of my paintings to the Metropolitan Gallery and told them you created them. That's not inspiration. That's theft." She started crying harder. "You don't understand. My life hasn't gone the way I wanted. I'm 42 years old, and I'm stuck in a job I hate. I've never accomplished anything. And then I see you, you finally made it. The gallery wants your work. Your paintings are going to be displayed. Everyone's going to know your name. And I wanted that too. I wanted to feel that. I wanted to feel successful. So you stole my success," I said quietly. "You took something I created from my pain, from my recovery, and you claimed it as your own. While I was suicidal, Elena. While I was in the hospital wondering if life was worth living, you were studying me like I was a project you could copy. That's not fair. You want to know what's not fair? I spent 7 years working toward this. 7 years of sacrifice. 2 years of therapy and medication and fighting for my life. And you decided that instead of doing your own work, you'd just take mine." Elena sat down on my couch. "What are you going to do?" "I'm not going to do anything," I said. "My lawyer is going to do it. You're going to cease and desist. You're going to publicly admit that the work you submitted to the Metropolitan was not your own. You're going to issue a written apology to the gallery and to me. And you're going to accept that our friendship is over." "Victoria, please," she reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "You had the chance to be honest with me. You could have told me you were struggling. You could have asked for my help. I would have supported you. But instead, you lied. You stole. You used my trauma for your own gain. That's not friendship, Elena. That's predatory." She left my apartment crying. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt empty. But then came the second phase of what happened. Elena tried to fight back. She hired her own lawyer and claimed that she had indeed created the paintings herself, that I was jealous of her work, and that I was using my platform as a recognized artist to suppress her career. She denied everything. So I released everything. I posted a detailed account on Instagram, complete with dated photographs, side-by-side comparisons, my therapy notes, with my personal information redacted, and documentation of the cease and desist letter. I explained my mental health journey, my 5-year dedication to my art, and how Elena had betrayed my trust during my most vulnerable moment. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The art community erupted. Artists who'd been duped by Elena's false credentials came forward. People who'd met her through me and had been misled about her work began sharing their experiences. Within 48 hours, Elena's LinkedIn profile was flooded with comments. She lost her job. Her marketing firm didn't want to be associated with someone accused of IP theft and fraud. Her lawyer dropped her case. The legal strategy became untenable once the evidence was made public and the narrative shifted against her. Within a week, she issued a formal apology through her attorney, admitting that she'd submitted work that wasn't hers, that she'd misrepresented her creative process, and that she was withdrawing all claims to those pieces. But the damage to her was far from over. I also filed a police report for fraud and theft. The local prosecutor reviewed the case and determined that there was sufficient evidence to pursue charges. Elena was charged with 2 misdemeanors, fraud and unauthorized use of intellectual property. She hired a criminal defense attorney. The case went to trial 3 months later. I testified. I presented all my evidence. I walked the judge through my creative process, the dates of my paintings, and the exact moments when Elena had photographed my work and submitted it under her name. Elena took the stand and tried to claim that she'd thought my work was collaborative, that we'd agreed she could use the photographs, that I was misremembering. But her own attorney had told me that her story didn't hold up to scrutiny. The judge found her guilty on both counts. She received probation, community service, and was ordered to pay restitution to me in the amount of $50,000, the value the gallery had assigned to the work she'd stolen. More importantly, her conviction became a matter of public record. Anyone conducting a background check on Elena Martinez would find evidence of her fraud conviction. Any future art community connection would discover what she'd done. But here's the thing about living in a world where your reputation is your currency: once people know you're a thief, they never trust you again. Elena tried to move forward. She moved to another city. She tried to restart her career. But the art world is small. People talk. Within 6 months, everyone in the broader art community knew what she'd done. Gallery owners didn't return her calls. Networking events didn't welcome her. Other artists were warned about her. She became radioactive. She reached out to me a year after the trial. An email, sent from a new address. She said she was sorry. She said she'd been in therapy and was trying to understand her own insecurities and jealousy. She said she'd made mistakes. She asked if I could ever forgive her. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give her. The trust had been shattered, and there was no superglue that could put it back together. Meanwhile, my exhibition at the Metropolitan Art Gallery was the most successful show of the summer. All 12 paintings sold for a total of $850,000. The exhibition was reviewed in Art Forum, Art News, and the New York Times. I was featured in a profile in the New Yorker about artists who'd overcome mental health challenges to achieve their dreams. I quit my design work. I opened my own studio. I began receiving commission offers from collectors and galleries. I was invited to speak at universities' ABO. I sent her a message through a mutual acquaintance. I hope you get the help you need. I hope you find your own path and stop trying to steal mine. And I hope you understand that trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. I haven't heard from Elena since. Here's what I learned through this experience: there are people in your life who will see your pain as an opportunity. They will sit with you through your darkest moments, not out of love, but out of a desire to understand you well enough to replace you. They will study your vulnerability like it's a blueprint they can copy. They will take everything you've suffered for and claim it as their own. And sometimes, the only way to protect yourself is to expose them. I didn't enjoy destroying Elena's reputation. I didn't feel victorious when she lost her job, or when she was convicted. I felt sad. I felt betrayed. I felt angry. But most of all, I felt clear. I understood exactly what had happened and exactly what needed to happen in response. The revenge wasn't in making her suffer. The revenge was in making sure she could never do this to anyone else. The revenge was in reclaiming my narrative and my work and my identity. The revenge was in thriving so completely that her attempt to steal my spotlight became irrelevant to my success. Because here's the truth about revenge: it's not about punishment. It's about accountability. It's about making sure that actions have consequences. It's about protecting others from the same predatory behavior. Elena will never be trusted again in the art community. Her criminal record is permanent. Her reputation is destroyed. Not because I wanted to destroy her, but because I refused to let her destroy me. And in protecting myself, I protected countless other vulnerable artists who might have been her next target. That's the real victory. That's the real last laugh. If you've been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've had your work stolen or your story taken from you, I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below and let me know how you reclaimed your power. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice, betrayal, and triumph. ***. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. The most powerful revenge stories are coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. ***.